On 22nd September 2017, I actually left this country with hope that I was going for a military training, which I met a man that gave me a form to fill. I paid to enroll me into military here in Nigeria. Then I took off to Kaduna, where he asked me to come after filling the forms and everything, just to discover that it was a scam and to find myself with other people that have been trafficked. So that was how the journey to Italy started.
Eastern part of Nigeria where I come from, your junior ones depends on you, your family depends on you. Mostly we that lost our dad on time. So the whole pressure was on me. I was the breadwinner of the family. I take care of my junior ones. I pay their school fees. I can remember when my junior brother called me, brother, what about my school? How am I going to pay my school fees? I couldn't. I couldn't stand the pain any longer. I have to sell everything off to leave the country for a greener pasture. So I ran around and I raised the money and gave to him. Connected me to the person. The person now said that we are leaving in 1 week time. I have to sell most of my clothes and other things just to have money in my pocket so that I can embark on the journey. But they didn't explain to me whether it's going to be this way. They just said that, yeah, it's just 2 weeks you are there.
July 20th, 2016, I left my Sapele Delta State to Benin in Edo State. And when I got to the place, he introduced me to the traffickers. They are called buggers. Those people, I've never seen them before. I don't know them. They have different names. So they kept us, after the paying of the money, they kept us in an hotel. Here they gave us a passport. The passport, the picture in that passport was not my real picture. So I hold the passport. It was an ECOWAS passport. We embarked on the journey from Benin. And 9 p.m. that same 21st of July, we got to Kano, where we joined other passengers. I was what am I getting myself into because of what I have passing through? It was not easy. It was not easy. But I said, let me leave this environment and go to another environment, cope with the depth that I'm coming from different places. At about 9 p.m., when we got there,
we were forced to pass through a very long bush that took us like 3 hours on a motorcycle, 2 of us like that. So each Okada took two persons. So that was how we're moving, falling on the road and others, sustained injury.
What these guys were driving inside the bush, I never believed it. I never imagined it. When they jumped to one gallop, I fell off. Nobody cares about you. Nobody give a damn if you are surviving or not. I have to stand. I was shouting, crying on that night. It was the one that was coming on my back that just mashed brake. But then I have bruises all over my body. But you can't give up in such things. It's dead or alive. So I have to jump in the bike, and that one carried me.
We got to the boundary. That is the border between Nigeria and Niger. We saw some immigration men open. These people, they were going to ask us some questions. I was a bit scared. And all of a sudden, the so-called traffickers, they went there, they know what they did, and they just let us pass. We got to the place called Zenden. They camp us there. There is so disgusting. I've never seen a place like that. A place where you see thousands of flies all over, perching on. But I've already started a journey.
People were like dead animals. Flies everywhere. I can't breathe. When I couldn't go inside, I was outside crying, calling God. How can I do this? And at that point, you can go back. It's a road of no return. I was, God. I say this, whenever even I saw fly in my house, I can't feel comfortable until I chase it out. Not to talk of seeing people fly, perching in their mouth, perching in their ears, everywhere. No, I couldn't stand that.
They brought another vehicle. This bus that's supposed to contain 18-seater bus. They packed 40 of us, up to 43 of us inside. They were squeezing us in.
They load us like sardine. So many people were crying. As a man, I have to bear it.
The place they will run all through the night till the next day. I couldn't move my leg. With the bruises all over my body. With the injury I sustained on this left knee. I was shedding tears all through the night. And they asked anybody not to talk. They covered the bus.
I cried too. So when the pain was too much, I was shouting. So they have to stop at a place, I've forgotten the name of that place, where they stopped and everybody came out. We refused to go inside again that night. So they started beating us and I must go inside. Then they loaded us again into the bus and I have to change my position where I was sitting. I was actually lapping someone before. So I have to change my position. That was how we got to Agadez early in the morning the next day.
That's where the real slavery starts.
It's where you don't come out. Where you see people live like animals. It's so pathetic. No.
So when we get to Agadez, we stay there for a good 1 month in one woman called Auntie Bola. She was very critical. When we were there, they gave us food like once in 2 days. At times, we may not even eat for up to 3 days. We only take water, a very dirty water, a gutter water.
Africans listen to me all over West Africa. I know that they are the one taking this journey most. Don't pray to be in this situation. Don't you ever think it. Don't you ever imagine it. Don't you ever conceive it in your mind. Anybody telling you this, that you can get to Europe through land, is your worst enemy.
boys and girls, so many of them Nigerians, Ghanaians, people from Togo, Benin, Sierra Leone, and many West African countries. But the manner with which we were treated, I was shocked, but I kept quiet because I knew no one there. I had no friend, it was just me and my God.
They asked us to start preparing ourselves to pass the desert. So I thought desert was just because nobody told me about that desert before. I thought it was just a normal thing that. So I started asking questions, nobody to even ask and the whole of that. So they gave us a little jerry can of water. They will pay 2 persons to a 30 liter of water, then give you another little 4 or 5 liters that you just hang around your neck.
And with some little food, some biscuits and all that, we put it in our bag and they say we are embarking on the journey to Libya. Oh God.
Then we embarked on this perilous journey through the Sahara Desert. We bought 25 liters of water each. These were all stored in the healer's truck, and we were still sitting in it, so tight and cramped.
They loaded us into a healers that would take 14 people, they load 45 people inside. We were all so shocked up and we could not even breathe well. The vehicle was on high speed, going on high speed.
The healers that was on my front now loose from the hook. A Ford car, a pickup, a truck, now loose from the bucket now pull off. People fell. What is this? I can't. I saw a pregnant woman that fell from that. That pregnant woman was heavy. She fell. I had nobody to help. People were dying like flies. I don't know what to do. The pickup was on a high speed. The truck was on a high speed. I don't know what to do. Everybody was shouting, crying. People were screaming. I now tapped at the pickup, the truck we are into. I was hitting, and the driver now slowed down. I now jumped down. People now jumped down. I went straight to that pregnant woman. I helped her and dragged her into the pickup.
Oh God, I was shouting, oh God, is this what I have put myself into? But let me see. The driver now took us to a direction where there is one mountain, and he kept us there and told us we should stay there. We should not make noise. If we make noise, we are on our own. And to go, we are there. We are there for the first day. Daybreak, no sight of this driver with the healers.
There was no more water for us to drink.
The sun was so hot, it was scorching. It was practically burning us alive.
We keep on drinking each other's urine.
Ragolis empty can, people were urinating into it and giving to others. So disgusting. What people that have not bathed for 3 days, urinating for me to, no, it is not possible. It is not possible. But those that were tasty, they cannot bear it. And the urine was greenish yellow. Greenish yellow. When you see the urine alone, there's no way. It's something you will not take close to your mouth, talk less of drinking it. But what can people do? People were drinking it. The second day, people were urinating and they were drinking urine. What nobody bargained for. They were drinking urine. Urine from another, not even their own urine, another person's urine. What can they do? Just to sustain themselves.
When I couldn't urinate any longer, the last one I managed to bring out, somebody was begging me, please share with me. Please share with me. And it's not going to be enough for me not to talk of sharing with another person.
It came to a point where a boy was asking the girlfriend, give me urine. She tried to urinate. Urine was not coming out. She tried. He said, please. He said, no, I don't have any urine to give. What a horrible experience. What a horrible experience.
I pray for that. I never saw that. We spent 9 days in the desert without water, no food, nothing.
We got to a point in the desert, in a small village in the desert called Duruku, mostly used by human smugglers and traffickers. There we were able to get water, but even getting the water was very, very difficult because it was just one well and thousands of us were scrambling to fetch from this well. In the process, people fell into the well, and even the smell of the water, it is evidence enough that someone had died in that water. But still, we had to drink from this same smelling water because at that point, it was our only hope. I refilled my gallon of water, I refilled it, and then we continued on the journey. We got to a place, still in the desert, an army checkpoint. At this checkpoint, it were mostly Nigerian soldiers. They took our money from us.
The Arab soldiers were so inhuman. They just brought us house. They stripped us of everything, every little thing that still remained in wristwatch. Some people have handset. Some people, I don't know, they have money. They stripped us of everything. Why the women, they molest the women. They took them to back of their vehicle and they rape some. That is the word. They rape some. They molest them. They put their hand inside their body. What sort of human is this? What sort of people are these? They don't even have any compassion, any feeling of that. These people have stayed in the desert for so long.
And even the little water we had. Then we boys, we were made to strip. They searched us and made sure that we had no valuables left on us. And the helpless girls that didn't have any money to give to them, they were raped. Not by one soldier, but all of them took turns in raping our sisters on this journey. And then after delaying us for some hours, we were left to go with our battered bodies, our torn pride, our humanity disregarded.
I told you we have 3 in-laws that were coming. And when we got to that border, it was only 1 in-laws.
Then out of 35 of us in the healers, we are just remaining only 15. The rest are gone.
We get to Gatron, the first city in Libya. These so-called Arabians, these so-called traffickers, these so-called inhuman people that the way they behave to others, I don't understand. They took us to a place like a cage. It's built like a cage. A cage. It's transparent. That is, you can see people inside. We are meant for 12 hours. They put the remaining of us inside that place. And the sun was so hot. We stayed there till evening. No water, nothing. And in the evening, they took us out from that place. They gave us little waters and little food to eat. And they put us inside a building. The next day, they embark on the journey. We got to where they call Saba, a notorious town in Libya. As we are getting there, we are hearing a gunshot. What sort of place is this? And they drive, and they took us to where they sold us again. I was asking myself, so is it that blacks are meant to be slaves? We know we are not meant to be slaves.
They beat me every morning. They whip under my foot every morning. They use hot iron to drop on your body. That place is not something somebody could witness. They asked me to bring money. I don't have nobody to call. They beat me every morning. I lost my senses. I can't remember anything. Nothing happened I can remember. It's when they now handed me over to police and the police took me straight to their prison. I thought that place is where I'm saved. But my brothers and sisters, hearing me from all over the world, is where you eat on top of dead bodies. We sleep with dead body for days. Nobody cares. When you ask them that this man is dead, say no, that he's not dead, that you give him food, that if you give the person food, that he will wake. The dead body smelling, we are sleeping with dead bodies.
We have been sold, me and my sister, for one lady there for prostitution. So I insist that I will never go for prostitution. So that lady said, it's no problem. So they caged me in one room for 1 month. So that there's a guy called Ali. So the guy will tell them that they should don't worry, he will help me and pay the money. But the madam refused. I'm drinking toilet water where I was caged. So when I was sold in Connection House Hotel over there, a woman, Benin woman that is handling it, I could remember that many of our teenagers lady, 15, 10 to 12 years, I was brought there. Some of them were virgins, then this virgin done with cucumber. Some of them were this virgin with a lady's heel. Some of them that refused, that will not do prostitute, that we brought up to 10 men to raped her by force. That is a must. I could remember there is a lady that the mix flour for her that she should drink by force. When she insisted, they forced it. Then the lady gave up. Then the night they threw her body away.
Some Arabians came into the garage where we were kept. And then the first word the man said after Salam Alaikum, he said to us, he said, when flows. In our confusion, we kept looking at him. We spoke in English to him, what is when flows? He kept demanding, when flows, when flows. So a Cameroonian translated to us that when flows is, where is the money? We asked him, what money? That was when the man dropped the bombshell to us that we had been sold as slaves to him. And each of us were to pay 2,000 dinars.
After that, Ali helped me with some soldiers. So they came and bust the house. When they bought the house, they took us to prison. God favored me through prison with their organs, then the head of the police. So I was bail free.
Please, my brothers and sisters, please, Africans, please, Nigerians, we are not slaves. We have one of the best mind. If only we can use our mind. Thank God that I passed through this and I could be able to tell you a story.
It was very funny to us because I could never fathom that in this 21st century, a human being could be sold as slave. Slave to do what? I asked, until they brought out whips, guns, and started beating us. At a point, I was broken emotionally, physically, even spiritually. I was broken when I saw a fellow traveler in Nigeria like me when he gave up the ghost because of the too much torture, the too much pain he was going through. He couldn't hold it anymore. He lost his life, and to my surprise, he was just thrown in the desert. No coffin, no grave, no funeral.
I was sold into slavery for the second time, and they put us in a cell where another Arab would come and buy us. But luckily for me, a Nigerian came to buy me, named Manager. And he took me to his own place where they call ghetto, a fortified place where he has gunmen. He has, they call them ghetto boys. They are guides. They maltreat people. You don't talk for money. You don't talk. They give you what you will eat. Sometimes they don't give you. Why? The women, the girls, they carry them out for prostitution. They carry them to a place called Connection House, where they use them for money till 9, and they bring them the next morning. Before again, they will take them back there. Then the men, they use them to go and work hard works till you will stay. You as far they want you to stay. They will ask you if you have anybody to control. They call it to control money. That is to transfer money to them so that they can allow you to go. If you don't have, you'll be their slave all through. Or you will walk in that place and buy yourself out of it.
I was able to contact my mother because they gave us phones. But immediately you're handed the phone to make a call, they start beating you. So when my mother heard me being beaten, she had to scramble. She did everything humanly possible to get me out of there. She ended up paying 220,000 naira to these human smugglers before I was allowed to continue my journey. When I was left, I proceeded to Tripoli, which is the capital of Libya. The journey was also stressful because the whole of Libya is just deserts, complete deserts. After 4 days of rough driving, we got to Banu Walid. From Banu Walid, we were handed over to another smuggler who pushed us into Libya illegally. He loaded us into a truck, covered us with a mat. In the dead of night, he took us into Tripoli. When we got to Tripoli, he asked us each to contact our brother or friend we have in Tripoli. I was traveling just by myself, so I had no one. He handed me over to the police, and that was my first experience in a Libyan cell. I stayed there 3 days, and after the policemen discovered I had no one, they just pushed me out of the cell and asked me to go look for anywhere. I saw a Nigerian on the road. I was able to speak my native dialect of Igbo with him. Luckily for me, he took me in, and I started working in a garage as a car wash apprentice. I did this job for 3 months. I was able to save some money, rented a one-room apartment. From there, I was working and saving money for the journey across the sea.
I went to Uptown Tripoli. I get married. I have a baby boy. There with my husband, we stayed together. Then one night, Arab woman just jumped in that he wanted to rape me. And I just have a new baby boy then. I was struggling with him. He told my husband he's going to short my leg, so it look as if this cannot be. But he shot my leg from 2017 till now. I've still been in the leg incident has not still been healed. But after the pain, they took me to the hospital for treatment. So I was treated a little. They removed the blood. I was treated, but they cannot much take care of me. So I have to come back home. So when I came home, things is still difficult. Very, very difficult.
We face the sun from morning till evening. No food, no water. Why? Because they say we did not have anybody to bring money for us. And it came to a particular time, I was going out to go and walk so that I can buy myself out of that place. You go, you come. There was a particular day, I was in a place called Lawaju, a car wash. We experienced, all of a suddenly, we just hear gunshot. In that place, and some Arab men just came to that place. They rounded up all with gun, and the able-bodied men, they took them. I was not like them. I was skinny, and so they left me behind. The able men, they carried them. We did not see them up to today. I have not seen them. Again, we went back. Some of them will come and take us to go and steal. Without our concept, you cannot resist. You cannot fight back. All because they have guns, they have whip. There was a day they came to do that, and the Nigerians said no. And at the end of that, they were dragging the gun accidentally discharged, and the Arab man was gunned down. That particular day, if I'm not mistaken, 100 blacks died for just only one Arab man that died. That day we cried, we tried to, but there is nothing we can do. There is nothing we can do. We are in a foreign land. We allowed ourselves to be used by our mind to the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people.
One night, the whole neighborhood was raided, and then unluckily for me, I was among those arrested for no reason. I was taken to the prison because I had no paper, no documentation. I was in the prison for 5 months. These policemen, seeing us as undocumented migrants, they began to beat us whenever they like, use us for any labor they seem fit. And one day, after 5 months of suffering in this prison, I was sold to a Libyan woman for 2,500 dinars. This woman took me to her house, and then I do any kind of job she wants. Whenever she has a problem with her husband, she will come to my room where I'm sleeping, start hitting me with rods, with plastic and water pipes, and whatever she could lay her hands on. She maltreated me, she abused me, she made sure I suffered. She made me know every day that I am a slave and she can do however she please with me. I cried always praying to God for my freedom. And then one day in October, I summoned courage, went out of her building. I begged a Libyan to give me his phone. He gave me his phone. I logged on to Facebook, contacted a friend I met in prison. He stays in Libya. This boy was able to arrange transportation for me. The taxi driver came in the middle of the night. I jumped the fence. I was scared, but at that point, I was willing to take any risk because it was better than staying with this lady. I was able to leave Anzara in the boot of this taxi. This man covered me with blankets and put watermelons on top of me. This was how I was able to cross checkpoints from Anzara to Tripoli. And then when I got to Tripoli, fear of being recaptured by this woman drove me to embark on this sea crossing in November. Normally the good time to cross is during summer, but I went to the sea in the dead of winter.
They took us again to Zuara, where I worked in a lawaju, that is a car wash. And on a particular day, after gathering some amount of money, they say they want to cross us. I paid 200, that is about 200 naira, 1,000 naira Nigerian money, which is about 2,000 dinar. I paid to the Nigerian burger. I stayed with him for another 1 month or two. He did not do anything about it. He transferred us to an Arab man. The Arab man used us for another 3 months without even transferring us to anywhere. We stayed there. We were nowhere to go. Had to run. On a very good day, one of us were trying to resist what the Arab man was doing, and he shot him in his leg. That man is a Ghanaian. His name is Raymond. He was shot in the leg that day, and the whole place was so quiet because they brought other Arab men that were with God. For us to save ourselves, we did not make much noise. Then we told them that what these people are doing is wrong. If you want to take us to Italy, take us to Italy. If you don't want to take us, let us go back to Nigeria. But to all this, what we are passing through in the hands of the Arab, because I want to go to Europe. Europe is not forthcoming. All what I want to leave Libya and get to Europe. But to cut a long story short, there was a day after I've paid another Arab man, and he transferred me to a Ghanaian, and the Ghanaian was so good. A Ghanaian man, I know those are nicknames, but the name he gave to me was Atta Musa. 30th of March 2018, they took us from where we are to close to the sea. We stayed from the morning till 12 midnight without food. All because they want us to lose weight, that will not be waiting in the boat. And 12 midnight, they just wake everybody. Hiya, let's get, and we get to the seaside. For the first time, I get to the seaside, and they ordered us into a boat, a leather boat that we carried. If it's much, it's not going to carry more than 40 people or 35. They put 135 people inside that boat. 135 people. And a day before that day, we heard the story of a boat that was capsized. That capsized. They were 120. A pregnant woman was inside that boat. Due to the pressure in that boat, she had an emergency delivery. And the people inside were afraid because blood was everywhere. They threw that woman and the baby inside the sea. Inside the sea. What a horrible experience. What a horrible experience we are passing through just because we want to get to Europe. And that woman and the baby, not knowing doing that, they invited the shark. The shark devoured on that boat. It was only because a rescue boat came for that boat. A rescue boat came. And only a boy was rescued. All the remaining of them died on the sea. That day we were crying when we heard the story. We were crying. What a life. What a journey. A journey that does not want our life. At the end of the day, the 30th stroke 31st of March, they brought us out and we were inside the sea. We traveled about, if I'm not mistaken, about 8 hours on the ice sea. We call it Lapa Lapa, a leather boat. That's what they called it, Lapa Lapa, a leather boat. And sometimes we see water entering into the boat, they would bail it out, and they were shouting. And it got to a point where the boat, we saw a big ship that they wrote SOS on it, trying to come to rescue. And everybody was just jumping, shouting. And that was when I saw myself. Somebody dragged me into the sea. As he dragged me, I was struggling with the person, and I removed the sand from my body. I came to the top of the sea, and I get into the boat. Get into the boat. Another person, they dragged me inside the sea again. At that particular point, I could not get into the boat because the boat was even sank. I decided to swim. I was swimming, trying to keep my body floating. I was trying to do what I can do. I did that for some time, and I found that I was losing strength. I was feeling cold. I was shivering, and I was asking God, have mercy. This is not what I bargained, but have mercy, have mercy. I stood there, I could not remember what was happening anymore.
in the middle of the sea off the coast of Tunisia. And then it was just us and an imminent death. It was obvious that we were all going to die that night. We all resorted to calling on God. The Christians prayed to God, the Muslims prayed to Allah, and other people who don't believe in either were just crying. I looked at myself, a Nigerian graduate with much hopes and aspiration, coming to an end in the Mediterranean Sea, food for fishes. I cried to God that I have family back home in Nigeria. Will I ever hear from them again? Is this the end of me? In my confusion, I decided to try whatever means to get back to land, to come back alive, because I had a reason to live. I had a motive for survival. And in this determination, I urged other guys who could swim. We struggled in this sea, trying to get back to dry land. Luckily for us, we saw a light from afar, and I know that wherever there is light, there must be humans and there must be buildings, and this must be dry land. So people started diving into the sea, trying to swim towards the light. And then I saw a pregnant lady, a Nigerian lady, in this boat. In my confusion, I didn't know if she was dead or alive, because our boat had broken in two, and the petrol with which we were powering our engine had spilled into the boat. This petrol, when it mixes with the salty seawater, it becomes toxic and burns the skin, just the same as one being burnt by fire. This lady was already covered in blisters already, eminent of this petrol touching her bare skin. But when I got close to her, I discovered she was still alive. I struggled with her, threw her into the sea because she was wearing a life jacket. She was wearing a life vest, and I know there was no way she was going to sink, that she would be afloat. I swam with this lady. Although myself, I sustained injuries in the course of struggling with this lady. The toxic water that mixed with the petrol burned parts of my skin. But in my desperation for survival, I kept paddling with this lady because she was buoyant. She kept me afloat because of her life jacket, and I was propelling her towards dry land. With this combination, we both made it to dry land, and from there we took off because of the policeman. I had to leave her behind because she was unconscious.
It was critic. Very, very critic.
I ran from there, trying back to locate the smuggler's house in Tajura in Tripoli. When we got there, everything was chaos. The smuggler had already run away because the policemen were about to raid his place. We all left the camp, and then I went back to my friend's place. I started working again as a painter. I had to learn painting and start saving money to try another crossing, because Libya at then, in late 2017, there was much shootings and fighting. It was imminent that war was looming in Libya, and we all were trying every means to leave the country. I saved enough money. I went to Zwara in Libya to try to cross, because someone told me it's closer to Italy than sailing from Tripoli. That night, when we were about to move, the Libyan man came to our room. He gave us all assurance. The Libyan man said to us in high spirits, he said, "Emshi Italia to mafish mushkila ba kois yom, inshallah kulla emshi Italia." In high spirits, we all boarded the rickety boats, but we were never to get to Italy. We were accosted by the Libyan Coast Guard just about an hour away from shores, and we were taken to a desert prison in Zintan. We were kept there for 2 months, from March until late May. We started begging the prison officials to please contact our embassy in Tripoli, the Nigerian embassy in Tripoli, so that we could go home. Because at a point, I discovered that I am just wasting my time, wasting my youth, wasting my life in Libya, that I was heading nowhere. And it is better at this point to come back to Nigeria. In June of 2018, we were registered, and on the 5th of June, 160 of us men, women, and children were brought back to Nigeria by the IOM, the International Organization of Migration. They brought us back, and then we were given an opportunity to come back home and start our life once again.
Say no to illegal migration.
Say no to illegal migration.
Say no to illegal migration.
Say no to illegal migration. It takes lives, it wastes time, and there is no hope in